Hello everyone, welcome back to Up Late with Ivy. I am your host, Ivy Rush, and I am excited for tonight's stories, and yes, plural stories. It's a two-parter, and it's a continuation of a story or a series that I started a little while back called The Silence Index, and I really liked part one, and I asked the author if I could continue doing the rest of the series, and they got back to me and said I absolutely could, and so I'm so excited to be continuing that tonight. Things get a little bumpy in these next two parts of the story, so I'm really excited for you to hear them. So I hope you've had a wonderful weekend, and even though the weekend is coming to a close, I hope we can go toe-to-toe with our Sunday scaries and have a great night together. So let's get into it. The Silence Index, Part 2, by Suspicious Facts 5106. My name is Samuel Rook, and I'm a first responder for the Department of Silence Anomaly Tracking, DSAT. My first mission after my injury unraveled everything we thought we knew about the silent zones. If you're a DSAT member, you need to follow my advice. Trust no one. In the silence, you are the only person you can trust. Don't let them trick you. 3 weeks after my injury, I was cleared to return to the field. I still walk with a slight limp, but otherwise I'm fine. Rennick didn't seem to think so. Sam, if you think I'm letting you back in the field already, a level 4 at that, then you must have broken more than your ankle last month. Fractured, not broken, and I've been cleared. It's not your call. Damn it, you know as well as I do, they don't take their health screening seriously. They're just looking to throw bodies at the wall. We both stared each other down. I knew he was right, but I didn't care. Over the past few weeks, I've been reading and rereading through the field reports, itching to get back out there. I wanted to get to the bottom of the silence, why it was appearing, and what its goal was. Rennick could see the fire in my eyes. Careful, Sam. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You don't want to let your sister down. I'm doing this for her, I shot back. She still hasn't been able to speak since our parents were killed. That forced Rennick to relent. When I was 8, my sister 5, our family was caught up in a zone. Found out later it was logged as a level 5. I was terrified. Couldn't hear anything, not even my own thoughts. The only thing I heard, while my parents' screams refused to fill my ears, was a single word: run. I still have trouble thinking about it. I didn't need to dwell on the past right now, though. What I needed was to get back out there. I just want you to be safe, Sam. I'll still support you while you're out there. I nodded. Rennick was just making sure I wasn't acting on emotions. You know I'm not going to be acting in full capacity today. I'm just running the relay point in the new zone for the other teams. You have the new tech? Rennick grunted and turned to open the large container at the foot of his desk. Inside was a metal box, the size of a lunchbox, next to a collapsed metal pole. The box had a number of diodes and switches, a circular glass window at its center. Even though the device was off, it still hummed slightly. Sound core, Rennick said. Don't know how it works, but it's supposed to set up a bubble where sound still works. One of the guys on your team will know how to work it. He shut the case. We arrived at the DSAT Commander Center, located half a mile from the actual zone. They'd measured this level 4 as one of the largest we'd ever seen. At least 4 city blocks. 5 teams would be deployed, 1 for each block. And then there was us, Wave Team, set up dead center to act as an on-site hub center. Rennick would stay, serving as the coordinator for all 5 groups. Each unit leader was issued a pulse beacon that sent out a location ping every 2 minutes, letting the techs track our movements in real time. I was technically responsible for running things on the inside, testing communication capabilities with the core in place, responding to changes in the mission, and compiling each team's reports. It sounded like a promotion, but they just wanted to squeeze what they could out of me, injury or not. What was odd was I wasn't told who the other teams were. For some reason, the higher-ups were keeping the groups isolated from each other. We'd all breached the zone from separate entry points, our team heading in before the rest. Each team had a specific signal, a wave for us, to identify themselves. If we ran into another team, we had to wait for external confirmation or ignore them. I don't know why we had to follow these protocols, but it made me nervous. I caught myself biting my nails, something I hadn't done since I was a kid, as I read the short brief before entering the command center. Darren Choi and Riza Theron, I'm guessing? The woman, broad-shouldered with red hair and a scar running down her neck, turned and gave me a single nod. The man didn't say anything. He dropped his cigarette and ground it out with the heel of his boot, then adjusted his vest. Sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. He had been through his share of ordeals. "He's deaf, so don't expect him to jump in right away," said Riza, breaking the silence. "I assume you're trained in sign language." "Yes, I am," I sighed in response. Good. I heard you're still coming off injury. Don't worry. You let me take point here, and just sit back and don't pull another muscle." Darren, watching both our lips during the exchange, gave a subtle shake of his head. Whether it was annoyance or weariness, I couldn't tell. I wheeled the case with the sound core in front of him. "I'll leave this with you," I motioned. Darren nodded. 5 minutes later, we received our orders to enter with 3 short pulses. Riza added an automatic to her kit, which she swung around her back. "It's not registered, so don't worry about your wrist rubbing off from all the buzzing." It was too late to deal with that right now. I told her to be careful, and we headed out towards the zone. We exited the car before crossing the threshold. The 10-foot black fencing had already been erected, DSAT units with combat fatigues and military weaponry. A far cry from the pistols we were outfitted with. Either way, we had a job we needed to do. As we approached the designated entry point, a group of 3 women came staggering from the blockade. One of them was sobbing uncontrollably, while the other 2 tried to hold her up. A guard went over towards them and talked with them. The 2 women were escorted away, while the one who was still crying was left behind. Darren put his hand on my shoulder and motioned for me to look away. As I turned to face him, I heard the ring of gunfire. I spun back around to see the guard holstering his pistol while the crying lady fell to the ground. I tried to run over, but I stopped. The woman was still crying. Even with half her head blown off, she wouldn't stop sobbing. Shit, I swore to myself. I had heard some rumors in my time off about this sort of thing. Creatures from the zone seemingly escaping the silence they were supposed to be bound to. I didn't think they were true. There was nothing official written about it. I motioned to the other 2 and led us past the scene, trying not to look as the guards dragged the still wailing creature away. The 3 of us crossed over, the world behind vanishing with a heavy hush. The sprawling cityscape was marred by cracked pavement and trash strewn about the street. The buildings were still intact, but they had all taken a beating from the shaking that comes before the quiet arrives. The warning lights were still flashing, their blaring sirens long silenced. A mist hung low, making visibility another issue. My body had gone quiet. I could feel my lungs expanding with each breath and my heart pumping faster, but everything else was quiet. Riza pushed ahead to the point where her form was beginning to blend with the fog. Darren stayed close, the sound core and a comms kit in tow. After a few minutes, Riza suddenly stopped and moved her hand to her pistol. "What's wrong?" I signed. "Look ahead." I peered ahead. Above the layer of fog settling above the street was a four-legged creature standing sideways, motionless, a deer. I was going to keep moving forward when the deer snapped its head directly at us. Its limbs moved in a crackling motion, like bones learning to bend. It charged forward, but not like you'd expect from an animal with hooves. It was sprinting, like a lion chasing after its prey. Immediately, I pulled out my pistol and took aim. Riza stood there, motionless. I waited until it got within a stone's throw away before I squeezed the trigger twice. It dropped like a rock and slid to a few feet away. It looked exactly like a deer. At least, it had all the right parts. The eyes were slightly mismatched, one sitting higher than the other. The ears were too long, its front arms muscled while its back legs looked like twigs. Riza shrugged. "I knew you had it. Didn't want to get in the way." I ignored her and motioned to continue forward. Riza stuck closer as we continued through the hastily abandoned city streets. Market stalls lay half-stocked. The few cars on the street were left abandoned, doors ajar. A baby stroller sat empty, left behind as the people fled. We continued forward towards our location. Shapes flickered at the edges of our vision, impossible to focus on. Gone the moment we turn. Whether they were real or imagined, I couldn't say. The silence made the shadows feel heavier. We arrived without any further problems. Darren spotted an open storefront and suggested we set up in there. Walls, a clear view of the street, and supplies, in case we needed it. After we cleared the convenience store, Riza started sweeping the perimeter, while Darren worked on the sound core. I flipped through the sealed bags of nuts, jerky, and dried fruits. I don't remember the last time I had enjoyed any other food than the meals that I received from DSAT. I slipped a bag of dried mangoes under my vest. I grabbed a few of the first aid kits, too, and went to rejoin Darren with the device. Something made me stop in my tracks. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. Something was watching me. I turned around. Between the two shelves, half hidden by the packs of dangling meat, a pair of eyes stared back at me. I dropped the kits and rounded the aisle, gun drawn. Nothing. I could feel the beating of my heart trying to echo in my ears. My mind had to be playing tricks on me. That's what I thought, except I could see two large, muddy footprints pointed towards the shelf. Darren popped his head up, giving me a questioning look. I shook my head and scanned the store once more. Still nothing. Unable to find anything wrong, I finally returned to Darren, my senses on edge. This place might not be safe. Still looking towards the back of the store, I felt a tap on my back. "It's ready," Darren signed. I called over Riza, who was idly standing just outside the store. We all put in our plugs, and Darren powered up the sound core. I felt a shiver run through me as my ears began to ring. And then, nothing. I hesitated before pulling my plugs out first and spoke. "Did it? It works!" I smiled at Darren, who showed the first sign of emotion I've seen as a grin crept along his lips. "It works," echoed Riza to my right. Darren's face dropped. His smile vanished. Then he quickly pulled his gun out and fired. The blast rang through the room while Riza's body slumped to the floor. "Why?" I said, gun raised and heart pounding. He put down his weapon and sighed. calm but firm. I could hear her. It hit me all at once. My grip loosened. It was right next to me. It could have killed me right there if it wanted to. Why didn't it? Just then, a figure came running from across the street. Guys, who fired? You got the sound up without me? What's happening? Riza, the real one, I hoped, had made it back to the front of the store, inside the range of the sound core. I raised my weapon again, which forced her to falter. Sam, what the What's the signal? We locked eyes. A few long seconds passed. Finally, Riza rolled her eyes and gave a limp wave. I lowered my weapon and let her in. Once she got inside and saw her own corpse, she sobered up. Fuck, that's supposed to be me. She kept herself from gagging as we dragged the entity's body out of the store and away from the range of the core. There was no blood, and the body weighed nothing, like papier-mâché. We covered with lighter fluid from the store. When Darren lit a match and tossed it on the corpse, though, it erupted into flames all too easily. Hope I'm not that flammable, Riza muttered as we watched it burn. Next, we assessed the exact limits of the core, marking where the world lost its sound. I used my haptic band to send a signal back to Rennick, letting him know we were set. He responded with the pattern, noting that the first team was entering. Darren sat, cigarette lit, and eyes watching the road while he began setting up the comms kit. Riza picked through the store, no longer eager to stray too far away. I sat there, staring at the smoldering corpse, pretending to be one of us. I didn't know what would come next, but I needed to be ready. We weren't the only people inside the zone. The Silence Index, Part 3. Static, then nothing. Another failed attempt to reach command. Darren shook his head and returned to checking the sound core. Riza muttered something under her breath I couldn't hear, or pretended not to. If our clocks were still accurate, it's been about half an hour since we contacted Rennick. We'd received information on our haptics that each team had made their entry into the zone, but we had yet to make direct contact. The corpse that was supposed to be Riza lay in a pile of ashes outside of the range of the core. The scent of burnt rubber lay heavy in the air. I still couldn't get over the fact I survived another close call with these things. What did they want? What did it want? My wrist buzzed. A long pulse followed by 2 quick bursts. Another team was inbound. I stood up and walked to the front of the store. Darren paused mid-dial. Riza sprang to her feet. What is it, Sam? First team inbound. Stay sharp. The 3 of us kept our eyes trained on the fog. Darren was the first to notice it. He pointed and motioned for us to hide. We ducked below the shop window as the thing started to walk by. Its skin was the color of bloodless flesh. Its legs were thick and low to the ground. It was larger than a car and walked like a frog climbing up a tree. In its mouth was the body of a man in DSAT attire, the gray suit, black boots, and the pulse beacon attached to its back. Riza reached for her rifle, but I stopped her with a hand signal. I'd read about these. Bullets wouldn't strike them down fast enough. Last time an FRU encountered a crawler, they avoided combat until its strike team arrived. We were going to do the same. Wave team, come in. We finally heard the voice of Command Central through the comms system. So did the beast. The crawler snapped its head, both of its eyes spread wide across its face, snapping onto our location. It dropped the body and lunged. Oh, fuck! Riza cried as she scrambled to the back of the store. I dove behind the front counter, while Darren scooted behind the shelves. both of us trying to get ourselves as far out of its path as we could. It reached the edge of the sound core. Then it froze. Then it just watched, observed. It stood there gazing at us, drinking in all it could see as we all sat there, terrified. Then it backed away and vanished, walked off as if it were never there. "Wave team, do you copy?" buzzed the radio again. Holy fuck, what was that? That thing was as big as a rhino. What the... Riza, quiet, I ordered. She shut up but gave me a sideways look. Darren handed me the microphone. "This is Wave Team, Sam speaking." I heard a rustle on the other end, and a man's voice responded. "Sam, it's Rennick. Things have changed. We need you to stay put for now. If anyone from DSAT shows up, do not engage. I repeat, do not..." The radio cut off, returning to the fuzzy static. The three of us stared at each other. I'm sure they knew as well as I did, a stand-down order like that meant we were as good as dead. Darren pulled out his pack of cigarettes, spilling them onto the floor. Riza's face was calm, but her bouncing leg gave her away. I wordlessly began fiddling with the comm system again, trying to connect to Rennick. I needed more info than that. Suddenly, the haptic band buzzed again. Another beacon was approaching. We tensed. If we weren't supposed to engage with teams, why was the command center still alerting us to their location? Was it to warn us? 3 human forms approached the store. One was a tall man, short gray hair and rugged. Like a man who had been in too many fights. He wore a scowl across his face. Behind him was a slender woman in civilian clothes, helping another man who had been put through hell, blood running from his scalp and clutching his ribs with his right hand. As they moved closer to the edge of the Corps' range, Darren glanced at me and signed. "Orders?" I sent a message over haptic to the command center. Unknown presence, holding position. Too long, followed by a quick short. I received no response, no confirmation or denial. We were supposed to ignore other teams, but there was a civilian, or something that looked like a civilian, and an injured man. "Shit," I muttered. The sound still felt too loud within the sound bubble. I stood up. The man in front turned his head to face me and stopped. He looked tense, hands steady above his weapon. I signaled to hold his position. "Darren, stay here and watch for any strange movements from them. Keep your gun aimed and ready. Riza, you come with me." We approached the other party. The woman was struggling to hold on to the injured man, but the other refused to help. Instead, he decided to get closer, walking into the sound bubble. He flinched and put his hand to his ear as he crossed. "Ow, what the... You must be the relay point. Weird. Never thought I'd hear my voice in a level 4. State your name and who's with you." I tried to make my voice loud, in control, but underneath I was a bundle of nerves. Was this another one trying to sneak into our group? The man scoffed. "Captain Logan Creel. Used to lead a strike force. That man with blood dripping down his face is Harrison. He's one of mine. I don't know the woman's name, but she understands signs. We saved her from Sector 2 before those damn creatures ambushed us." I studied the man again. He had an air of authority around him. "We have orders not to engage with other teams." Captain Creel laughed at that. "Yeah? They dumped us in here without proper gear or intel, so fuck the orders." Creel slowly moved his hand to his side, near his weapon. A shot snapped past his face, forcing him a step back. I took that moment to regain control of the conversation. "Listen, I've got a man back there under orders to drop anyone who even blinks wrong. You know as well as I do that these things can look like us. If you want the bubble, you stay outside the store." He paused. "Fuck it. Creel signaled for the other two to approach, the woman struggling to carry the man over. Riza rushed to help as they crossed the threshold. The woman winced, her face twisting as the sound slammed into her ears. The man remained motionless. They brought him to a flat spot and laid him down. I pulled Riza aside. I want you to stay out here and keep an eye on them. Make sure they don't do anything shady. I looked in her eyes before continuing. I don't like this. I'm going inside to see if Darren and I can get the comms working again. Until then, keep your rifle ready. I watched her face as she nodded. It looked just like the one we burned. I shoved that thought down. I couldn't afford to doubt my own team right now. There were 3 unknowns setting up camp in front of ours, and I needed to find out which of them I could trust. I rejoined Darren inside the store, while Riza positioned herself in front of the door. I told him what the situation was, making sure he could read my lips. He nodded and began working on the comm system. "Hey, can we get some Band-Aids here?" came a voice a few minutes later. I looked out the window and saw Creel standing, looking at me expectantly. I nodded and turned to the back of the store. I picked a first aid kit off the ground and stared at those muddy footprints. They were still there, even though whatever had made them had left. Before I could get back, I heard shouting. I saw Riza pointing the gun at the woman next to the window. I rushed outside. Darren glanced up from the equipment, confused. Then his eyes widened as he realized what was happening. "If this bitch doesn't say a word, a single goddamn word, I'll put a bullet through her right now." Creel got in Riza's face, angry. "You'd think I'd drag one of those things along with me? She's fine. For all I know, you're the fakes, pretending to help us just to watch us break." "Creel, stand down. Riza, lower your weapon." Riza kept her sights aimed at the woman's head. "But Sam, she hasn't spoken a word since she got here." "Then let's find out why before we start shooting. We can't afford any mistakes." Creel chirped in. "We've been through hell just to get here, and now you're treating us like we're the demons? Where do you get off letting your people act like this?" I glared at Creel. He held my gaze. The store's bell chime rang out as Darren entered the standoff. He knelt down in front of the woman and began signing to her. She signaled back and wiped a few tears from her face. He turned and faced me. "PSD," he stated. "PSD. Permanent silence disorder. An affliction some who experienced a zone contract. My sister. She's lived with PSD since we were pulled out from the zone that took everything away." "Riza, she's fine. Just come back in for now." Riza finally lowered the rifle, but didn't sling it. She kept her finger just above the trigger guard as she stalked back to the store. Her eyes never left the other group. I tossed the first aid kit to Creel, then turned back to the store. We stayed inside for who knows how long. The sun was beginning to set. This was the longest I had ever been inside a zone. I don't know how long they planned on having us stay put for, but I was thinking of taking us out soon if we couldn't reestablish communication. I was getting ready to bring it up with the others when there was a tapping at the window. It was Creel. I opened the door. "You need to let us in, right now." "Listen, Creel, I felt the cold press of steel underneath my vest, right below where I had stashed the dried mangoes earlier. "There are things out there right now. We're coming in." I was debating on saying something back when I looked past him and saw what he was talking about. A crowd of figures had formed on the outside of the bubble. They were dressed in all kinds of attire: business suits, sportswear, street clothes. The one thing they all shared was the same blank expression, vacant and hollow. Their eyes seemed to follow me as I stepped to the side and let Creel through, never taking my gaze off them. Riza sat coiled, following Creel with a glare as he made himself comfortable. The woman, Karen, I found out, came in with the injured Harrison. He was still groggy and couldn't talk much. The only thing he said was a garbled "thanks" when Karen applied the bandages to him. Darren and I stood by the window, watching the crowd of creatures continue to stare at us. "That sound thing of yours keeps him out, right?" called Creel, munching on a pack of nuts he'd swiped from the store. "Not exactly," I replied, eyes fixed ahead. Creel sighed loudly. "This has got to be the worst day at work I've ever had. Goddamn flyers and crawlers all over the damn place. What about you, Mr. Silent? You got any stories to share?" Creel shifted his weight while he stared at Darren, keeping his hand rested on the hilt of his pistol. Riza sat on the counter, her rifle rested atop her knees, eyes darting between the two. Darren turned, looked around for a moment before beginning to sign. I watched, curious to know what this man had been through. At park with wife and kids. Zone came. They died. I didn't. I saw grief flash across his face, a pain only he could bear. Never again. Creel dropped his smile and went back to eating nuts. I know what it's like to lose family, but I was still a kid then. I couldn't imagine how my father would have felt if he was the one who was left behind. Riza shot up from where she was sitting. "What the fuck are they doing now?" We all swung our heads towards the window. For a moment, I had forgotten I was still deep in the soundless abyss. Was that hope creeping in, or just delusion? The mimics were shaking, one after another, until all of them were jerking in the same erratic rhythm. Suddenly, as one, they all stopped and smiled, wide, unnatural grins that nearly stretched to their ears. Then they all dispersed, walking off in different directions until they disappeared from sight. Riza shuddered. "Sam, I don't want to stay here anymore. Let's just go out and plow our way through them." Before I could respond, another figure appeared from the fog. It was walking cautiously, but when it spotted the store, it started moving faster. It was a man, and he was outfitted in a familiar DSAT uniform. In fact, he looked a little too familiar, almost like... "Is that Harrison?" Riza exclaimed to my left. Creel sprang forward to the window, swore to himself, and started rushing out the door. I motioned for Darren to keep watch of the other two and followed him out with Riza in tow. "Creel, hold! What if that's the real Harrison?" I shot a nervous glance towards the barely conscious body still lying in the shop. "No chance. You think a person could make it through here without getting banged up?" Creel drew his pistol. The seemingly uninjured Harrison spotted Creel and started patting his head. "And one more thing. I don't take orders from you." Creel fired. Harrison, or something that looked like him, dropped instantly, confusion and betrayal frozen on his face as he clutched his bleeding chest. Creel spat on the ground. "It's even faking our call signs." I grabbed Creel before he could walk back into the store. His arm was tense but trembling slightly. "Get your hands off me," Creel snapped. "We have to be sure." He pulled his arm away. "And how do you suppose we do that?" I stared at the Harrison corpse. Blood was pooling from its now motionless form. The last one didn't bleed like that. We cut it open. Look inside." We held each other's gaze for an uncomfortable amount of time. I'm not cutting it open," Creel said, breaking the silence. "I don't care that it's one of those things. I'm not cutting open my teammate." "Why?" I shot back. "Scared of what we might find?" He bit his lip. Panic flashed across his eyes. But he didn't challenge me. "Okay, I'll do it. Riza, help me drag it over." Riza looked at me, unsure, but slung her rifle around her back and followed me outside the bubble. Crossing the threshold sent a chill through my body as I returned to the all-too-familiar silence. We dragged it inside, a slight pop striking my ears as we returned to the safety of the sound core. Some of the still-working street lamps were lit now, their pale light illuminating fleeting shadows. Creel looked on as we set the body straight. He looked identical to the one inside, but so did the fake Riza. His body didn't feel light like the other, though. It was solid, heavy, and the blood that streaked as we dragged it to the autopsy made it feel all the more real. Do you even know how to open a body? What it's supposed to look like inside? I ignored him as Riza handed me a knife, another piece of gear she'd decided to bring. I'd heard that you start just below the chin, cut all the way through, straight down to the belly, peel the skin back, and pray something looks wrong. My hand, unsteady, hovered above the point of insertion. Before I could stab down, I heard a gasp behind me. Creel was pressing his gun to the back of Riza's head. "Don't you dare cut that open," he called out, eyes full of fear of what was to come. I dropped the knife and pulled out my own sidearm. "Creel, we need to think rationally here. If this is Harrison, then we need to deal with the one inside. If it's not, then we can all go back inside and pretend this never happened." Creel began moving his arms in distress, pushing Riza's head in all different directions. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're probably one of them, trying to see what makes us tick. You want to make me watch. Then you're going to do it to me, too." Bang! A gunshot rang out from inside the store, followed by a woman's scream. Creel, distracted momentarily, left himself open for Riza to stand up and slam him into the ground. "Try that again, fucker, and I'll break your arm." "Riza, inside, now," I ordered. We rushed in, leaving the broken Creel on the ground. Inside, we were met with a bloody mess. Darren was on the ground, clutching his side. Harrison was up, eyes wild and head still bleeding, holding a scalpel from inside the first aid kit. Karen was on the ground, eyes shut and crying. I could tell. This was one of them. I shot, only hitting it in the shoulder as the fake Harrison charged. I sidestepped, but that sent him crashing right towards our equipment, the sound core. It smiled as it found itself next to the device that promised us safety and silence. He raised his fist and began slamming it into the device, cracking it slightly. I put 2 more bullets into it. Like a bursting water balloon, his skin deflated as a full body's worth of blood gushed out. No guts, no bones, just blood. I rushed over to Darren while Riza stood there, stunned and covered in red liquid. The cut wasn't too deep, and I was able to wrap some gauze around his waist to keep the blood from flowing. He winced as he sat up. He seemed shaken, but otherwise okay. He looked at me and nodded, giving me a sign of thanks. His eyes moved past me and widened in fear. I turned and saw sparks crackling across the core. The device's humming died out, its lights dimming until it finally shut off. Fuck. It was the last thing I heard Riza say as our sound bubble burst. Once more, we were pulled into the silence, its cold grasp tightening around us as it welcomed us back into its soundless fold. I hope you enjoyed tonight's 2-part story. It was a lot of fun to read, as all of these stories are. Thank you so much, Suspicious Facts, for allowing me to continue to narrate your work. It's been so much fun, and we'll keep going with it in the future. I can't remember how many parts of the story are left, but as of now, I don't think there's too many. So I'm excited to continue doing that. So I look forward to doing that in the future. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful night, a wonderful week ahead, and remember, it's only a story. See you later.